I know you're going through a lot, so we're not going to keep you here all night. Can we go through this? So, okay, let's see, you're 148 doorbell detected visitor. What does that mean?
So the doorbell has a camera on it when you get up to a certain proximity, and when you ring it, it detects a visitor.
Okay. People are already distracting me out here.
Oh.
So in fact, why don't we do this? So I work a lot of stuff like this in bank robberies, and when I talk to, a witness at a bank robbery, sometimes I find it best for them to just say, tell me what happened, get it all out, and then once you get it out, let's go over it, okay? So just get it all out as far as this. Tell me exactly what you remember, and I'll take notes about where we can go.
Okay. So this 1:48 a.m.
Let me switch the chairs. Because when they come knocking, when they come knocking, I gotta use that key. Do you need more water?
No.
I brought you Gatorade.
Oh, thanks.
All right.
Alright, so 1:48 a.m., doorbell detects a visitor. So when we were over at the neighbor's house, the next day we were looking at his camera as well, and it didn't show anybody walking up to the driveway, which is kind of weird. That's one reason I put that on there, because it showed Nicole dropping her off, but nobody actually walking up to the house. It was kind of weird, but she was in the house.
Okay.
So,
and what time are we talking?
This is still 1:48.
Okay.
So, 2 a.m., Shannon gets into bed with me. 4 a.m., that's when my alarm goes off for work, and I'm supposed to get dressed, brush my teeth, everything I do upstairs.
Okay.
4:15, that's when I get back, slide right into bed next to her, and start having a conversation with her about having the house up for sale, and talking about actually proceeding with the separation.
Okay.
And obviously it gets pretty emotional, like we're talking about, we felt the disconnection was there, like falling out of love, and trying to stay together, maybe just for the kids' sake, but we're realizing that doing like our homework, it's not, most of the time that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And it gets pretty emotional because we have 2 beautiful kids and we have 1 on the way. So it's just a matter of it was very emotional, we were both crying, and at the end, we just said, she said she was gonna take the kids to her friend's house for the day, and she would be back. Okay. And I was like, okay, it's fine. And so I went downstairs, made my protein shake. It was 5 a.m., that's when I did that. Packed my lunchbox, had my oatmeal, chicken, filled my water jug up. 5:15, I went outside, backed my truck up, was loaded up. Had my book bag, my lunchbox, computer, water jug, my big clear container. I put big clear containers in my truck so it's easy just to pull out, pull in, just depending on what I'm going to use. My O-ring kit, and I knew I was going to do some stuffing box rubbers that day, so I got some various open wrenches from my toolbox, and I know those would work better than the ones they would give me.
Okay.
5:30, that's when I went to work.
Okay.
And I hadn't heard from Shanann for about 2 hours there, so at 7:40 I texted her and asked her if she could tell me where the kids were, if she took them anywhere.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
At 12 I texted her again, call me. Nothing. And then about 12:10 p.m., that's when my doorbell visitor, another visitor, and I was like, it popped up on my phone.
Chris Watts, a man who once seemed ordinary, now stands accused of unimaginable horrors. His wife, his children, gone. But there's one thing that doesn't add up, one thing that no one can explain. Why did he plead guilty? For his mother, Cindy Watts, the truth is more elusive than ever. Every day she searches for answers. Every day she wonders, did my son do this? I just want the truth, she cries. But what if the truth isn't what it seems? And as the courtrooms fill with questions, one question stands above all. Why? Why did he do it? Or was he forced to say something he didn't mean? Was he hiding something even darker? Cindy's only hope? To find the real story, even if it destroys everything she thought she knew about her son. The answers, are they buried beneath a plea deal? Or is something deeper, far more complex, waiting to be uncovered? Before we dive deeper into this heartbreaking story, welcome to the channel. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories that bring the truth to light, even when it's hard to face. North Carolina, 1985. A quiet town, a modest home. Inside, a young boy named Chris Watts played with his siblings, living a life that seemed as ordinary as any other. The kind of life where, on the outside, everything appeared perfect. But life wasn't always that simple. Not yet. Chris, the middle child of 5, was born to Cindy and Ronnie Watts. He was raised in a house where money was always tight. His father worked long hours in a paper mill, and his mother kept things running at home, cleaning houses just to make ends meet. The pressures of poverty were a constant backdrop, but it never seemed to break the family's spirit. Chris grew up in a small, modest home in Spring Lake, North Carolina. Cindy remembers Chris as being a good boy. He was the kind of child who didn't get into trouble. Quiet, calm, easygoing. The type of kid who didn't need much to be happy. A child who found joy in the simplest things. A baseball game, a trip to the local store, family dinners. There were no signs of rebellion, no fits of anger, no real outbursts. Cindy says, he was just normal. He wasn't difficult. He was easygoing, nothing to worry about. In fact, growing up, Chris was known for being a good kid, a boy who helped around the house and never caused trouble. He loved sports, spending afternoons with his brothers, playing basketball in the driveway or football in the yard. There were no major signs of behavioral issues. Cindy reflects back on those days with a hint of longing. He was always just a kid who went along with things. He didn't make a fuss. But life, as it often does, began to change. The family moved to Colorado, and that's where Chris's life would take a turn. It was there that he met Shannon Zuchek. She was a woman full of life, full of energy, and they seemed to balance each other perfectly. She was the kind of woman who made everything feel brighter, her bubbly personality, her drive, and her sense of ambition. Shannon was the type of woman who would never settle for anything less than the best, and she had big dreams for the future. For Chris, meeting her was the beginning of something that would eventually turn into his entire world. The couple seemed like a perfect match. Chris, calm and easygoing, found his equal in Shannon, who was assertive, confident, and always pushing forward. Their personalities blended seamlessly. In the early days of their relationship, they were both motivated by dreams of success and happiness, and they quickly found comfort in each other. Shannon, with her southern roots, was a strong presence. She could light up a room just by walking in, and her drive was contagious. Chris, by contrast, seemed more laid back, more reserved, yet he seemed to thrive off of Shannon's energy. They married in 2012. Chris had finally found the woman who made him feel alive in a way he hadn't before. Their wedding day was filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a bright future ahead. Together, they were unstoppable, or so it seemed. Shannon quickly became the more outspoken of the two, starting her own business and getting involved in social media, where she would build an online community around her lifestyle. She was the driving force of their family, and Chris was, by all accounts, her biggest supporter. Together, they had 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste, who became the center of their world. From the outside, everything looked perfect. A loving couple, 2 beautiful children, a beautiful home in Frederick, Colorado, a business that was thriving. Shannon, always the public figure, shared their lives on social media, documenting every step of their journey, from family vacations to birthday parties, and every milestone in between. To the world, they were the picture of happiness. But as often happens, things aren't always what they seem. Behind the smiles, behind the carefully curated photos, a darker story was beginning to unfold, a story that no one could have anticipated. Cindy Watts remembers watching her son and daughter-in-law from a distance. She saw the Instagram posts, the family photos, and the happy images that seemed so perfect. But there was something in the back of her mind that kept nagging her. Something didn't quite feel right. She recalls thinking to herself, I don't know what it is, but I've just got this feeling. For years, Cindy brushed it aside. She figured it was just motherly concern, a natural instinct to worry about her son, especially now that he had a wife and 2 young daughters to care for. Yet, when she was able to spend time with Chris and Shanann, she noticed small signs of tension between them. Nothing dramatic, just a sense that their once easygoing relationship had started to shift. In the months leading up to the tragic events, Cindy started hearing things. Some of it came from Chris himself, some from friends and family who saw the cracks begin to show. There were arguments, tensions about finances, and pressures that weren't visible to the outside world. Cindy had always known her son as someone who avoided conflict, someone who took things in stride. But she started hearing him speak about Shanann in ways she'd never heard before. Small things at first, like how exhausted he was, how difficult it had become to balance everything, how much pressure he felt. She always pushed him, he would say. She always wanted more. Cindy didn't know the full extent of the pressures Chris was facing. She didn't know how deeply he felt about Shanann's increasing independence or the strain their marriage had come under. But what she did know, with an uncomfortable certainty, was that something had changed. Something deep inside of Chris had shifted, and she had no idea what it was. By 2018, just months before the murders, Chris had become a different person. Quiet, withdrawn, less communicative. Cindy remembers one visit when Chris had come over to her house to visit. He seemed off. He wasn't himself. He was quiet. Too quiet, Cindy recalls, and it wasn't like him to be distant, especially with his family. She didn't know it at the time, but that visit would be one of the last normal interactions she would ever have with her son. From that moment, things seemed to spiral faster and faster. And then, just days before August 13th, Cindy's worst fears were realized. The phone rang, and everything came crashing down. The son she had raised, the boy who was supposed to be her pride and joy, was now at the center of a nightmare. Chris Watts, the easygoing boy from North Carolina, was now accused of something no mother could ever imagine. And in the wake of it all, Cindy was left asking herself the same question over and over again. How did this happen? As we begin to unfold the story of the Watts family, it's important to remember that not everything is always as it seems. What the world saw as a perfect family was, in truth, a complex web of struggles, secrets, and silent pain. It's a reminder that sometimes, even the people we think we know the best can surprise us in ways we never saw coming. And when it all falls apart, no one is left untouched. It was another sleepless night for Cindy Watts. The phone call had come early that evening, just as it always did. But this one felt different. There was an ache in her chest, a tightening of her throat, as if she already knew what was coming. She picked up the phone, her hand trembling slightly, trying to calm herself before speaking. The line connected, and there was Chris's voice, soft and distant. The same son she had raised, the boy she thought she knew. But now, the words that came from him felt foreign. Cindy's heart sank as she listened to Chris explain his situation, as he did every time they spoke. The guilty plea, the pressure from his lawyers, the impending consequences. It all felt like a whirlwind, a storm that Chris seemed helpless to escape. But Cindy wasn't ready to accept this as the truth. She couldn't. Something inside her still screamed that the Chris she knew, the Chris she loved, wasn't capable of this. She wasn't ready to believe that the boy who grew up helping his father with the yard, the son who used to share his dreams with her, could really be a murderer. As Cindy sat on the couch, her hands clenched tightly around the phone, the reality of what was unfolding before her set in like a weight she couldn't shake. She couldn't just sit by and watch him plead guilty without knowing the full truth. She couldn't just accept it. Not when she knew in her heart that something didn't make sense. She took a deep breath before speaking, her voice steady, but full of the fear and uncertainty that had been gnawing at her for weeks. "Chris, if you didn't do this, don't confess to something you didn't do," she told him. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and desperate. She needed him to hear her, needed him to understand that no matter what, she couldn't stand by and watch him destroy himself, especially if he was innocent. This was more than just a legal battle. It was the fight for his life, for his dignity, for the truth. Cindy's mind raced as she spoke. Was Chris truly guilty? Could it be that he had been pressured into this plea deal, pushed into confessing to something he didn't commit just to avoid the death penalty? The uncertainty that had haunted Cindy since Chris's arrest now felt like a knot in her stomach. It was a mother's instinct, one that told her something wasn't right. This didn't align with the Chris she had raised. This wasn't the boy who had sat in her living room just a few years ago, laughing and joking with her. This wasn't the son who had always been calm, collected, and respectful. "I don't understand how we got here, Chris. Please, you have to fight this. If you're innocent, you have to fight it," Cindy urged, her voice shaking now, a mix of pleading and frustration in her tone. The distance between them on the other end of the phone felt palpable. Chris's silence in response was deafening, and it made Cindy's heart ache even more. She could feel his pain across the miles. She knew he was struggling, but she also knew that whatever had happened that night in August, the truth still hadn't been fully told. She couldn't shake the thought that there was more to this story than the public would ever know. The silence on the other end stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Cindy's mind flashed back to the days before the arrest, to the days when Chris was still that easygoing kid she had always known. He had been so different, so careful, so attentive to those around him. She couldn't reconcile that Chris with the one who now stood accused of something so heinous. She kept thinking, how did we get here? What happened? Chris finally spoke, his voice faint, barely above a whisper. "I can't, Mom." The evidence. It's all there. His words hit Cindy like a slap to the face. Was this the truth? Was this his admission of guilt? Or was he just giving in to the pressure, to the overwhelming circumstances surrounding him? Cindy closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. The pain of hearing him say that, "It's all there," made her blood run cold. But she refused to accept that. Cindy knew her son better than anyone. She knew the man who had always been a gentle soul, the boy who loved his daughters with an overwhelming tenderness. This couldn't be the same person accused of killing them. There had to be another explanation, something they weren't seeing. "If it's all there, why don't you tell me everything, Chris? Why don't you fight for the truth?" she asked, her voice cracking under the weight of her own emotions. She was fighting the tears now, the desperation of a mother trying to hold on to her belief in her son, trying to hold on to her faith that she could somehow make things right. But she didn't have all the answers, and that was what scared her the most. She was left in the dark, unable to see the full picture. All she had were her instincts, and they told her that Chris was still hiding something. Chris's voice, once calm and distant, now trembled with uncertainty. "I don't know how to fix this, Mom. I don't know if I can." There it was again, the doubt, the fear. Cindy's heart shattered as she heard the weight in his words. She knew this wasn't the same Chris she had known. This wasn't the strong, capable man who had stood by her side all these years. This was someone who was broken, lost, consumed by something far beyond what he could comprehend. He wasn't just facing the loss of his family, he was facing the loss of himself. And Cindy, in that moment, realized that she was just as lost as he was. She sat there in the quiet of her living room, holding the phone with both hands, her heart breaking for the son she had always loved. She couldn't give up on him, not when there was still hope. She couldn't let the plea deal be the end of their story. Cindy needed Chris to fight. She needed him to fight for himself, for his family, and for the truth that still remained buried beneath the weight of the accusations. "Chris, please, if you didn't do this, don't let them make you say you did. Don't let them take that from you," Cindy whispered, her voice a mixture of pleading and firm resolve. She had said everything she could. Now all she could do was pray that somehow Chris would find the strength to stand up for what was right. But as the conversation came to a close, Cindy realized the truth. She wasn't just fighting for Chris's freedom. She was fighting for his soul. She had to believe that he hadn't done this. She had to. No matter how much the world had changed, no matter how much the evidence seemed to stack against him, Cindy's heart refused to accept that the man she raised was capable of such horrors. As she hung up the phone, Cindy sat back, staring blankly at the wall. The air in the room felt thick with the uncertainty of everything that had transpired, and everything yet to come. What would happen now? Would Chris follow through with the plea deal? Would he fight for his innocence, even if it meant risking everything? The questions lingered in the silence of Cindy's home, unanswered, echoing in her heart. And she couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. The truth, she thought, was still out there. And Cindy was determined to find it, no matter where it led.
I wake up every morning just crying, thinking this is not going to be what's going to happen every single day. It's just so hard to get through it. I just don't know how to get through it.
Tell me about his childhood. Did he play sports? Was he in scouts? What kinds of things did
Yes,
he
he
do?
played sports. He played sports from the time he was 5 years old up until he was 17. And he was in basketball, he was in baseball, he was in football, and loved NASCAR. He and his dad went to the NASCAR races all the time. Loved sports, and he was a good kid. Had two best friends, and that's who he grew up with, and still are friends with them today. And there's nothing that would have predicted any of this could have ever happened.
Yeah.
Nothing in his childhood at all. I would have never in a million years thought something like this could happen to him at all.
You didn't see things like him getting into fights? Or...
No fighting. He was quiet, and he got along with people, and he didn't start anything, and he was a perfect teenager, tell you the truth. He did not even rebel. He wanted to go to NASCAR Tech. We made that possible for him.
What did he do after he finished school?
He worked at the dealership as a service technician and was making good money and loved it. He bought a toolbox, and he started buying his tools, and enjoyed it. He was doing well.
When and where did he meet Shanann?
They met, and he liked her, she liked him, but it didn't, I don't think that was love at first sight or anything. They took a little while and I guess got to know each other and, dated. It was always a little strange that she always said a lot of things about Chris in front of me that I didn't like. Like, this isn't the kind of person I would date. He doesn't know how to do this, or he doesn't know how to do that. He looks like a skater boy. look at his hair. Look how much stuff he puts on his hair. It was just on and on and on, and I just got a bad feeling.
And they got married in 2012. Did they get married in North Carolina?
They did. Mm-hmm.
How was that?
We didn't attend.
Really?
Mm-mm. We didn't attend because Shanann and I just couldn't get along, and I didn't like the way she treated him.
What do you know about their marriage and their issues?
Oh, very little, very little. You can only observe. I could only observe what I saw when I was around them. Christopher always seemed anxious, and he when she needed something, I mean, he would run. He wouldn't walk, he would run, he would get it. He just always seemed to be right there at her beck and call.
And did that seem odd to you? Or?
Very odd. It was very odd. He just seemed nervous.
So how much did you see them over these last 6 years?
Probably twice a year. We would go up there.
Did you stay with them, or?
Yeah, we would stay with them and stay a week and then come back home.
Tell me about Bella and Celeste.
Oh, Bella was just like Chris, just like him, shy, cautious, conservative. Cece was a ball of fire. I mean, she was fearless, completely fearless. She just loved to run, 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 run. So they were wonderful. It breaks my heart to know that they're not here. They were beautiful children, beautiful children.
What did they call you?
Mimi.
Mimi? And how about Ronnie? What did they call?
Papa.
Do you think Chris loves Shanann?
Oh God, he loved her. Yes, I believe he loved her at first. I believe he did. But I think as the years went on, I think it just being in that kind of a relationship, which the social worker even said that marriage should have ended a long time ago.
Shanann's pregnancy, and what did Chris tell you about that? Was he excited?
No, I don't think he was. I think it was a shock to him. And he said that they have been talking about divorce, that they are not compatible anymore, and he was not happy anymore. And I finally thought, he's finally seen the light.
And I take it Chris had never been in trouble with the law?
Never. He's got one speeding ticket and didn't even know about that.
Tell me what happened when they were reported missing. What did you find out? How did you find out? Who told you?
I think Ronnie called me. Ronnie called me and said that they're missing, and I thought, I don't believe it. I didn't believe they were missing. I believed that she was going to punish Chris. She was just going to punish him, take the girls and just punish him. I had no idea of anything else. Christopher called and said, Mom, they're searching the house. I said, okay, that's fine. I mean, and I still was not worried. I was not worried. I just thought Shanann had run off with girls.
So walk me through the sequence of events over the next few days. Did you and your husband travel to Colorado?
Ronnie did.
Okay.
Ronnie did. And I mean, Christopher let everybody come in. Her phone is there. Her purse is there. Everything is there. But there's no kids and there's no Shanann. And I was not worried. You know, I thought, she has just gone off and I'm going to punish you for this and you can worry about me. But when Christopher called us and he said, I said, do you want us to come down now? He said, tell Dad I need him. Tell Dad I
It was November 19th, 2018, and Cindy and Ronnie Watts were seated in the back of a packed courtroom, their hearts heavy with a weight they couldn't put into words. The room was filled with tension, the air thick with anticipation. Chris's sentencing hearing was about to begin, and for the first time, Cindy and Ronnie would be forced to confront the reality of what their son had done, or was accused of doing. This was the moment when the judicial system would make its final decision, a decision that would alter the lives of the Watts family forever. Cindy's hands were clasped tightly in her lap as she tried to steady her breathing. She could barely bring herself to look up at the judge or the people who sat in the gallery, watching with their judgmental eyes. The court was filled with survivors, victims' families, and media personnel, all eager for closure, eager for justice. But Cindy wasn't there for the crowd. She wasn't there for anyone else. She was there for her son, the son she had loved and raised, the son she couldn't believe was sitting before her, accused of murdering his wife and 2 young daughters. How did we get here? Cindy asked herself, her mind racing as the proceedings began. The gavel sounded, and the judge called the room to order. In that moment, Cindy's world felt completely out of her control. This was it. The outcome of everything she had feared, everything she had been trying to make sense of for months, was finally about to come crashing down. Chris sat at the defendant's table, his face pale and gaunt. His eyes were downcast, filled with a mix of shame, guilt, and perhaps a touch of fear for what was to come. But Cindy couldn't see him like that. She couldn't look at him and think of him as the man accused of killing his family. She couldn't reconcile that image with the boy she had raised. The man sitting before her was still her son, no matter what had happened. The shock and devastation of the murders were overwhelming, but Cindy refused to accept that Chris had committed such an atrocity. Cindy's thoughts swirled around her like a storm. The events of the past few months, Chris's arrest, the news coverage, the interviews, and the endless questions had left her exhausted. She felt as though she was drowning in grief and confusion, unable to breathe, unable to process the truth of what had happened. The questions plagued her. What happened that night? What went wrong? Cindy didn't know the answers, and no one could give them to her. She had to sit there, in that courtroom, trying to understand the unthinkable. As the hearing continued, the victim impact statements from Shanann's family were read aloud. Each word felt like a blow to Cindy's chest. She had already heard the details of the crime, the chilling confession Chris had made, the bodies of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste found in an oil field, the graphic descriptions of how they had been murdered. But hearing Shanann's family speak, hearing their grief and anger, made the reality hit harder than it ever had before. Shanann's family described their devastation in raw, unflinching terms. You took away a mother, a wife, 2 young daughters. You stole their lives, and you left a hole in this world that can never be filled, one of Shanann's relatives said. Cindy listened, her heart aching for Shanann's family, but also for the family she had tried so hard to hold together. What did Chris do? Cindy wondered again, but she had no answers. All she had was the belief that something was wrong, that Chris had been broken in some way, and that the full truth had yet to come to light. After the victim impact statements, the courtroom grew quiet. Cindy and Ronnie were called to speak. Cindy's heart pounded in her chest as she stood up, her legs shaky, her mind racing. She had practiced what she wanted to say, but now, in front of the judge, the prosecutor, and the gallery of people, her words seemed to disappear. She stepped up to the podium, her voice faltering at first. She cleared her throat, trying to steady herself. Then, she spoke the words that would forever echo in her mind. "We have loved you from the beginning, Chris," Cindy began, her voice breaking. "And we still love you now." The courtroom fell silent. Cindy's words hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. She didn't care what the others thought. She didn't care about the verdict, the guilty plea, or the years of pain ahead. All that mattered was the truth of what she had just said.
And I can have you folks introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Cindy Watts.
Ron Watts.
Thank you. And I have authorized you to make a statement to the court as paternal grandparents of the children. And if you choose not to make a statement, but your designee, Ms. Powers, chooses to, she can do so as well. How would you like to proceed
Can I
today?
read that?
Yeah, do you want me to start?
I want you to start, but I would like to read
Who's going to be speaking today?
Your Honor, initially, they've asked me, and they're hoping that they have the strength to speak, but if they do not, they've written out their statements and asked me to finish for them. So
That would be fine. Who would like to go first?
if I could start, Your Honor. On behalf of the Watts, Your Honor, and to the community, we thank you for the opportunity and the recognition under the Victim Bill of Rights. We come today as the grandparents and the parent of the daughter and children whose life was taken in this case. We are not here to ask for leniency. We are not in any way condoning or tolerating the crime that has occurred and the pain that has been caused. We join in our daughter-in-law and grandchildren's family in saying this should never have happened. This is not condonable. This is something that we will never get over. We appreciate the consideration that everyone has paid, most especially the families that have lost everyone. We appreciate that they begged for Christopher's life. We agree and echo what they have said, that it is not his place to take anyone's life, nor would it be our place as a community to take his life. So we thank you for the opportunity and for every consideration and effort that's been put out. The prosecution in this case has in fact respected the Victim Bill of Rights. They took the time to explain that the information that my clients had at the time that they were interviewed was not correct. They were misinformed. They were searching for answers. They were not intending to cause any pain to anyone, and they appreciate that the prosecution answered their questions and gave them the time and the respect and the consideration so that they could tell this court and everyone in this community that the interview content was not their message, that they accept that their son has done this, that they accept that he chose to plead guilty, that he sought and requested their consent and agreement for a life sentence. They appreciate that he is given the opportunity to serve that life sentence. It is his responsibility, it is his sentence, and it is not enough to make up for what has done. We understand and we join the family in that we have questions. We don't know how such a thing could possibly happen, or that a man that was responsible for raising his children and protecting his wife would take the steps that he did, and that he would disregard their bodies and the love that he had for them and they had for him and everyone else, and take the gestures and put this community through the investigation and the discovery and the responsibility of bringing justice. We do not understand that. We do not think it was appropriate. We cannot begin to think that an explanation will ever justify it. My clients indicate that they understand that a full opportunity for a confession with all of the responsibility and accountability has not occurred. And they support the family and the request that that happen, if not today, at an appropriate time, in an appropriate manner, so that everyone can have peace, to understand to the best of their ability the details that they need and to have their questions answered. And by giving this opportunity of a life sentence, we hope that he embraces that moment. That had the death penalty been pursued, there would not have been an opportunity to be accountable and to give a full confession. And had the death penalty been sought, counsel would have fought for his life, the prosecutors would have been engaged in a multiple-year battle, the families would have been torn apart, this community would have had to subsidize it and endure it, and we have so much respect and gratefulness that that did not happen. we would strongly encourage Christopher Watts to give that full confession in the tone and in the timing that he thinks is appropriate with the guidance of his counsel. We feel that it would be appropriate and helpful to ease the pain and the suffering. But we also say we don't think that there's anything that he can say that will ever account for his behavior. There's nothing that can be done to cure the harm he has caused.
She still loved her son. Cindy's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Chris, her son, the boy she raised, the man she still believed in, despite everything. She continued, "We will always love you. No matter what has happened, you are still our son, and we will never stop caring about you. But we need to understand what happened. We need the truth." Ronnie, standing beside her, placed a hand on her shoulder for support. He said nothing. He didn't need to. His presence spoke volumes. He, too, was struggling to come to terms with the fact that their son was facing such serious charges. Yet, just like Cindy, he couldn't bring himself to fully accept that Chris had done this. As Cindy finished speaking, she felt the weight of her words settle into the room. The plea she had made, the mother's plea for answers, for justice, and for understanding, had been spoken. But no matter how hard she tried, no matter how much she loved Chris, she couldn't escape the reality that his actions had caused immeasurable pain. The room was still, but in Cindy's heart, a storm was brewing. She needed to know what had led her son to this moment, to the point where he was now sitting in that courtroom, facing the consequences of his actions. Was he really guilty? Had he been coerced into pleading guilty? Or was there a darker truth hiding beneath the surface, one that Cindy wasn't ready to confront? Chris didn't speak during the sentencing. His eyes were filled with emotion, but he remained silent as the judge pronounced his sentence. 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. The death penalty was off the table, but the sentence was still a harsh one. Cindy's heart shattered as the gavel came down. In that moment, she knew that the man she loved, her son, was now trapped in a prison of his own making. And Cindy couldn't help but wonder, had he done this because he was guilty? Or had he done it to protect someone else?
Has considered the arguments made by the attorneys. The court has considered the statements made by the victims in this case. The court's going to find that the plea agreement is fair and reasonable under the circumstances. I want to acknowledge the Rusick family as well as the Watts family that showing mercy on Mr. Watts is understood, and I respect that decision to request that the district attorney not seek the death penalty in this case. And so the court is going to accept this plea bargain under the circumstances. Words that come to mind when I hear the evidence in this case are a senseless crime and the viciousness of the crime. And equally aggravating in this court's determination is the despicable act of disposing of the bodies in the manner in which they were done in this case. I've been a judicial officer now for starting my 17th year, and I could objectively say that this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen. And nothing less than a maximum sentence would be appropriate. And anything less than the maximum sentence would depreciate the seriousness of this offense. So the court is going to sentence Mr. Watts as follows. With regard to count number 1, murder in the first degree as it relates to Shanann Watts, the court is going to sentence you, sir, to a life sentence in the Colorado Department of Corrections, followed with no possibility of parole. And that is going to run consecutively to all but counts 3 and 4. With regard to count 2, as it relates to murder in the first degree with Bella, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to count number 3, the court is going to sentence you as it relates to Celeste to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to counts 4 and 5 relating to Bella and Celeste as a different theory of first-degree murder, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and legally those sentences must run concurrently as a different theory of first-degree murder. Recognizing the unlawful termination of pregnancy for the unborn child that has been named Nico, the court absolutely believes that the maximum sentence of 48 years would be appropriate to run consecutive to the other charges, with an additional mandatory parole period of 3 years as set forth by statute. With regard to count number 7, as it relates to tampering with a deceased body, as well as counts 8 and 9, each a class 3 felony, the court is going to impose a maximum sentence of 12 years each for those counts to run consecutively to the other counts. The court is going to order that the statutory fees be paid and court costs. The court's going to grant the prosecution 91 days to file a notice of restitution, and that will be the sentence of the court. We will shortly be in recess. I would respectfully ask the parties that you remain in your seat. There is a plan by the deputies on allowing people to exit the courtroom, so please remain seated until you are authorized to leave the courtroom based on the direction of the deputies. Deputies, I would respectfully ask that you take this defendant into custody and have him serve the rest of his life in the Department of Corrections. We are in recess.
The weight of the past year hung heavily in Cindy Watts's home. It had been over a year since Chris Watts had been sentenced for the brutal murders of his wife, Shanann, and their 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste. The world had moved on, but Cindy hadn't. The world's judgment of her son was clear. He was a monster, a man who killed the very people he was supposed to love. Yet, despite the verdict, the media coverage, and the endless questioning of Chris's character, Cindy remained steadfast. No matter what the world believed, Chris was her son, and she couldn't let go of the love she had for him. The house was quieter now. It felt emptier than ever before. Cindy would often sit alone in the living room, staring at family photos from years gone by. There were moments of happiness, moments that felt so distant now. The faces in the photos, once so full of life, now felt like strangers. The pain of losing Shanann, Bella, and Celeste would never fully leave her, but neither would her love for Chris. Despite everything, Cindy could not reconcile the image of the man sitting in prison with the boy she had raised. The Chris she knew was still in there, buried beneath layers of pain, confusion, and for all Cindy knew, remorse. She couldn't abandon him. "I have always loved you, and I still do," Cindy whispered to herself, the words heavy with the complexity of maternal love. Chris had been her son for over 3 decades, and that love wasn't something she could easily turn off, no matter the circumstances. No matter how much she wanted to scream, to cry out in anger at what he had done, she knew that love was a part of her. It was as much a part of her as her own heartbeat. And no amount of public shame or personal grief could take that away. But Cindy's love was not blind. It wasn't a love that ignored what had happened. It was a love that tried to understand, even when the pieces didn't fit. For Cindy, the struggle was not about denying the horror of the crime. She was fully aware of what had happened. The struggle was about reconciling the person she had raised with the person the world now saw. She knew Chris had confessed. She knew he was guilty of the crime. But a part of her, a big part, couldn't accept that he was the monster they painted him to be. There were nights when Cindy would cry herself to sleep, clutching a pillow to her chest, trying to imagine a world without her son. It wasn't just the loss of Shanann and the girls, it was the loss of Chris, the boy she had nurtured and loved for so many years, the boy who had once smiled at her from across the dinner table. That Chris seemed lost forever, replaced by a man who had done the unthinkable. Yet, the mother in Cindy refused to abandon the son she had known. Cindy's relationship with Ronnie, her husband of over 30 years, had also changed. They had always been a strong team, facing life's ups and downs together. But Chris's crime had torn a rift between them, not in their marriage, but in their understanding of what had happened. Ronnie had been more accepting of Chris's guilt from the start. He had always been pragmatic, believing that Chris's actions were the result of his own choices. But Cindy couldn't fully accept that. She couldn't stop herself from wondering if Chris had been pushed to that point by something deeper, something that had been hidden from them all. As Cindy reflected on the path that had led her to this point, she thought about the first time she held Chris in her arms. The warmth of him, the sense of peace she felt, knowing she had created something so precious. In many ways, that love was unshakable, even in the face of this unimaginable tragedy. A mother's love, Cindy knew, was not just unconditional, it was also complex. It didn't demand perfection, and it didn't ask for answers. It simply existed, in spite of everything. Chris had made a decision that night. He had taken the lives of his wife and daughters, and for that, he would face the consequences. But Cindy had made a decision too. She had decided that her love for him would not falter, no matter how hard it became to hold on to that love. She could not let go of him, not completely. "I've been through hell this past year," Cindy confessed to a reporter from People.com, "but I'll never stop loving him, no matter what. He's my son." The words were spoken softly, but they held a depth of meaning that Cindy didn't fully understand herself. Her love for Chris was not about condoning his actions. It wasn't about excusing what he had done. It was about a mother's love, the kind that never fully fades, even in the face of tragedy. The public's perception of Chris was still harsh, and it didn't matter how many times Cindy defended him. The world had already made up its mind. People couldn't reconcile the image of Chris Watts as a loving father and husband with the man who had committed such a horrific crime. Cindy had tried to explain, but the media had already shaped the narrative, and the public had followed suit. Chris was a villain, plain and simple. Cindy's defense of him was seen as an act of denial, a refusal to face reality. The accusations hurt, but Cindy understood. The world was angry. The world was grieving. And sometimes, when people are hurting, they need someone to blame. But Cindy could not stand by and let Chris's legacy be defined by a single moment of madness. She would not let her son's story end in shame. She would fight for him, even if it meant going against the tide of public opinion, because Chris was still her son, and that love would never be erased, no matter how much the world tried to redefine him. Every day, Cindy wrestled with the idea that her son, the boy she had raised, could have been responsible for such horror. She couldn't escape the images, the memories, the pain. And yet, through it all, Cindy continued to love him. Her love for Chris was messy, complicated, and often painful, but it was real. She had seen the man he could be, the man who loved his daughters, the man who had laughed and played with them, the man who had, at one point, seemed like any other father trying to make his way through life. Cindy's grief was profound, but so was her love. A mother's love, Cindy learned, didn't come with easy answers. It didn't fit neatly into the boxes the world wanted to put it in. And in that complexity, in that tension between love and pain, Cindy found her strength. She was still his mother. And that love, no matter how broken, no matter how misunderstood, would carry her through the years ahead. "I don't know if I'll ever fully understand what happened," Cindy said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But I know that Chris is still my son, and I will never stop loving him." It was a statement that summed up everything Cindy had come to understand over the last year. Love is not black and white. It's not something you can just turn off when things get difficult. Cindy's journey was far from over, but one thing was certain. No matter what happened, her love for Chris would never fade. And in a world that had cast him aside, that love was the one thing that no one could ever take from her. Like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories.